Welcome to the New York Business Leaders Podcast, presented by the Coyle Group. We interview the most interesting and influential business leaders in New York and hear their stories of success, challenges, and lessons learned while building their businesses and personal brands. New episodes drop weekly, so please be sure to subscribe to get updates in your favorite stream. Without further delay, here's your host of the New York Business Leaders Podcast, Gordon Coyle.
Welcome back to the New York Business Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Gordon Coyle. In today's show, I sit down with Rob Ferguson and Brandi Merrick from the Ferguson Alliance, which is a consulting firm focused on family businesses. Really interesting conversation for me since my firm is a third-generation family business, so I could relate to a lot of the discussion points in the conversation. And there was a lot of conversation around vision and culture, and something that I found really interesting is the question they ask a new client to help set the stage of the engagement. Are you a family-first business or a business-first family? Pretty interesting perspective. Rob and Brandi help family businesses with their unique challenges, guiding them on their direction, how they're going to get to where they want to go, their strategy, communications, and so forth. Rob worked in the corporate and private equity world before forming the Ferguson Alliance, and Brandi worked in a large family business that had engaged Rob's firm for help. Something that I love during the discussion that you'll hear is that Rob says that a family business and a corporate business are pretty much the same. Every business has the same problems: keeping shareholders happy, keeping employees happy, keeping suppliers and customers happy. The only difference is that in a family business, you go to Thanksgiving dinner with your shareholders. And I think you'll enjoy this three-way discussion. And if you'd like to reach out to Rob or Brandi, you can go to their website, which is ferguson-alliance.com, where you'll see their direct phone numbers and email addresses. Finally, if you have an interesting story that you'd like to tell on this podcast, why not contact me? My name is Gordon Coyle, and my email address is gbcoyle@thecoylegroup.com, or you can give me a call on my direct dial, 845-474-2924, and let's chat about getting you on the show. I'll put my information and Ferguson Alliance's information in the show notes, so you have it there. Now, without further delay, let's get on to the show. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the New York Business Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Gordon Coyle. Today, we've got an interesting kind of deal going. We've got two people on the show, and I'm hoping that I don't screw this up because it's much easier with just one person. But we've got Rob Ferguson and Brandi Merrick from the Ferguson Alliance, which is a company that helps mostly family businesses grow, prosper, build their value proposition, lead them all the way, hopefully to transition if that is in the cards for them. We're going to have a lot of good conversation around that, but I'm not going to steal their thunder. I'm going to ask Rob, why don't you kick it off? Tell us about what you do, and then we'll go to Brandi and kind of do a little introductory session, and then we'll kind of get into some questions and conversation.
Sure. Thanks, Gordon. We really appreciate being here. It's fun for Brandi and I to be on your podcast together.
Great.
I founded Ferguson Alliance over 12 years ago. Prior to that, I had been working as a CEO in a private family business as well as a public company. And I ended up serving on some family business boards, either as a board advisor or as a lead independent director. And I really started falling in love with family businesses and the uniqueness that family businesses have. And so that's where Ferguson Alliance, this whole idea came about, realizing that there was a terrible statistic happening where the lifespan of family businesses over the last 50 years has been reduced by 60%. And I don't know, that just seemed like to me an important problem to work on. And so that's where I've been focused and helping these family businesses reverse that trend. Because at Ferguson Alliance, we really believe that businesses certainly are made up of people, but we also believe businesses are living organisms that actually can live forever as long as the people in those businesses don't screw it up. So we're there to help advise and guide primarily through our years of experience. Brandi will tell you about herself in a minute, but we've got decades and decades of experience of working in family businesses or advising family businesses. And our advice usually comes from the mistakes that we made. And so we can share those and they can avoid some of those holes that we fell into. But anyway, so
That's great.
Thanks for having us here.
You're welcome. Brandi, why don't you talk for a couple minutes and tell us about what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thank you for having us on. I am Brandi Merrick, and I now work with Ferguson Alliance, but I was a client of Ferguson Alliance. We started with Rob. My family did about 10 years ago. This summer was the 10-year mark. And so we went through the process, and through that process, I really discovered that I would like to help people like myself and like my family get through some of the things that they're struggling with, and how to optimize their business and how to optimize their family relationships, and how to get to a place to where all are thriving, the business, the family, everything. And so that was really my motivation and driver to join Ferguson Alliance. And I'm really enjoying what I do today.
That's great. So the company is focused on family businesses, not just small businesses.
Correct.
And what size companies are you working with? Is there a predominance in any industry vertical, anything like that?
A great question. We really are not focused on any one industry, although we each have our own industry experience. I think the size of the business is important. So we have two groups that we work on, which is one is the lower middle market. So that would be businesses that are probably 50 to $250 million of annual revenue, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then we also focus in on what we call small businesses aspiring to become lower middle market. And those are businesses that have been around for a while, about $5 million of annual revenue up to maybe 30 million. So those are the two segments that we look at. We're in all sorts of industries: financial services, manufacturing, construction, distribution, software technology, commercial real estate, agriculture, specialty agriculture, horticulture. So we're in all sorts of interesting industries.
That's great. And one of the themes that I kind of hear is family businesses have unique challenges that big companies don't have, corporate entities don't have, non-family businesses don't have. And there's a lot of family dynamics that create those challenges. Can you take a couple of minutes and talk about what those are and what you see, and what are the common, challenge themes that you see over and over?
Brandi, you want to take that, since you spent your entire life, adult life, in family business?
Absolutely. So a lot of the challenges that we see, and was certainly in my family's case as well, is direction. So what direction to take the company? What direction to take the growth? Where does the company want to be, and how is it going to get there? When you get those generational factors in there, obviously there can be some disagreements around what is the best strategy and how it should go. Communication is often a factor. How the family communicates, not only between themselves, but with the other non-family members in the organization. The family dynamics, like you said, in general, yes, absolutely, because there is no separation at times from business and personal. They're crossing over constantly. And so it's navigating and having to be pretty disciplined, which most people are not, especially with their own family members, of having that discipline to say, like, we're in a business mindset right now. We need to be here together in that. Then, of course, we help with financial challenges as well, and not just from a deficit perspective. We sometimes have clients where they're experiencing rapid growth, and one, they don't know how exactly they're doing that, but it's working out. And then two, they don't know what to do with that growth in terms of revenue and team development and how to continue to invest in their business and what to do from that regard. So it runs the gamut between all the things, but absolutely how these families communicate together and how they work together through these challenges is oftentimes what we can shed a lot of light on, because we're that third party perspective. We don't have an agenda or any kind of previous history that we are navigating with those individuals.
One of the things, Gordon, if I could,
Sure.
coming from a CEO of a private equity company and public company, contrasting that to family business, is every business, whether you're family run, family owned, or institutionally run or owned, has the same problems. Keeping shareholders happy, keeping employees happy, keeping suppliers and customers happy. I mean, we all have those same problems. We all have to deal with the regulation. The only thing is, in a family business, you go to Thanksgiving dinner with your shareholders.
Or you don't.
Or you don't. And some of your key employees used to be the cousin that broke your Tonka toy at Christmas. And now that cousin is your boss. And so the family dynamics that Brandi speaks of is an unknown phenomenon that if you haven't been in a family business or around family business, it's really hard to be an exceptional advisor to family business. So, because Brandi's absolutely right, those are the core challenges that we see every day. But the big difference, and quite honestly, that's why we don't spend time with institutional businesses or non-family owned business, because believe it or not, we love the complexity. We love the challenges and trying to help families navigate through that, as Brandi said.
Interesting. Brandi, did you want to jump in on something? I saw you kind of like leaning in.
No, I was just, it is very nuanced. And so
Yeah.
I always like to tell clients and say, I just like to be there for them as much as possible, because it can feel very lonely. It is something that does take, like Rob said, it takes some skill to be able to relate and to help them navigate those challenges, because it really doesn't get more personal than this. It is their entire life. It's their personal life and it's their business life, and it's all rolled into one. And it's emotional, and it's it's tough.
I've worked with a lot of family businesses also during my career. And of course, I'm in a family business, or was. I worked with my father, and there was generational conflict. And mostly, interestingly, was over technology. When I came into the business in the 1980s, there was no technology. Then there was a rapid adoption to technology. And my father was like, if I can't open the checkbook and see how much money I've got, and I've got to ask somebody, this isn't for me anymore. So is there, and then I had a brother and a sister in the business, and there was challenges there as well. Do you see greater challenges generationally between, parents and children, and or grandparents and children, or kind of among siblings and cousins that you mentioned earlier?
Well, it's a great question. I think generally it's going to be generational. And that's why we see family businesses life cycle diminish greatly by the time it gets to the third generation. And it's because of the challenges that Brandi talked about. That first challenge she mentioned was direction. What we see is the second generation grows up around the dinner table with the first generation who founded the business, and watches that first generation struggle to make ends meet, struggle to make payroll, struggle to get new clothes for school. They see and understand that, and they kind of grow up with that kind of work ethic. The third generation tends to grow up in a much more affluent life, and the business, by the time the second generation is running it, is more structured. It's probably a little more professionalized. It's a mixture between family and professional leaders. And so that third generation isn't hearing the legacy and the struggles, and they become a little bit naive about the business. And sometimes, I'm speaking in very general terms, but sometimes almost feel entitled that when they are of age, that they can step into their father's or their mother's job position because they were born into that. And so that's one of the factors that we really see that's harming the life cycle of family business. So to what we do, and I'll let Brandi talk about it, is to level set that direction, to try to thwart that phenomenon, is we always start with one question. Are you a family first business or a business first family?
Interesting.
And it's that one question and that decision that then sets the course for multiple generations.
Is there a right answer to that question?
It's the one that the family chooses.
That's what I thought. Interesting.
Yeah, and we've seen some clients that really get it right from the jump and are able to answer it quickly. But I guess just to define it a little more, when talking about being a business first family, that's when you're going to put the interests of the business first, regardless of your personal interests. So you're going to pick people that are the most qualified for the job position, not just because they're a family member. So if a family member isn't qualified enough for the position, then you're going to be okay with hiring in someone else. You're going to put the business first. Now, a family first business, you're looking at, it's very important to you that if you're the president, that then your son or daughter then becomes the president of the company. You want to carry on that tradition. You're going to, the visualization of the family within the business is very important to you. You want to keep that. And so I know in my personal experience, just hearing all of that, I was like, we're family first. We need to be family first. But I wasn't putting all the pieces together for our dynamics and for our family to say, well, maybe that serves me to some degree, but it doesn't serve the 150 other people that work here. And so that's when we really declared that it's very important that we do what's in the best interest of the business for all of our stakeholders.
Got it. Rob, I think you were kind of mentioning earlier that in let's say on the smaller side, this $5 to $30 million firm, family-run business, what I see very often is they lack real structure. They don't understand the role of leadership and management. I know that Brandi has a big thing around culture and excellence. So I wanted to talk about that. Is that what you experience? And then how do you have that conversation with a leadership team that doesn't understand that they're the leadership team?
Yeah.
They don't understand metrics. They don't understand what the goals are. They don't have really a management structure. How do you have that conversation? How do you get that going? How do you get it kind of established and running within a firm? It's a big cultural shift, I would imagine.
It is. And it starts with that first phone call that we get. We never get a phone call when things are going great. So, our first question is, well, why are you calling us? What's going on?
Yep.
So we have a saying inside our company at Alliance, we meet the client where they are.
Right.
So if they're having a cash flow problem, let's go in and help figure that out. If they're having a problem with family members, maybe making decisions, or maybe they've got a great strategy, but they've struggled getting it implemented. Whatever it is. So what we start with where they are and what is the issue that caused them to give us a call. And we dig into that. And that's the first step in our process of onboarding any new client is we do a very thorough assessment. We do a financial assessment and a non-financial assessment. or another way to look at it, we look at the tangibles and the intangibles.
Mm-hmm.
And we spend a lot of time digging into that assessment and then distilling it down and bringing back to the family business owner what we learned. And in essence, we help them scope out a problem statement or a couple of problem statements, because a lot of times our clients don't even know what the problem is. They're experiencing symptoms, but they don't know what the problem is, and certainly aren't clear on the causes. So then we report back to them, here's what we've discovered. What do you think? How does that sound? And then here's some suggestions on how those issues can be resolved. And then we just put a roadmap together for them on, you can pick the entire menu. We can do all 5 of these initiatives, or we can just go down the list. We would sequence it in this manner for these reasons. And then we get engaged and we help them. Nobody's going to pay our fees if they're not open to change. I mean, we're going into this knowing there's a problem, knowing I have to change, but human beings don't like change, right? Because they're afraid of change. Yep. So we help them manage that. We help them learn how to lead people through change. So some of the times we have to work at the very basics, like you were saying, Gordon, and really that's the difference between us and maybe some other advisory firms out there. Is we embed ourselves and work shoulder to shoulder with that owner and with his management team, and we guide them along the way. We're not the answer people. We're the guides. We ask the questions. We have some tools that we can share with them, but in the end of the day, it's their business, and we just have to guide them through the issues, the problems that they're having.
It sounds very collaborative. That must be kind of the way it all works.
It is, and not only is it collaborative with the client, but every week our team of advisors, we meet every Friday and we do peer reviews. And so we're collaborating with one another, making sure that we're providing the best advice and the best solutions. And then we'll collaborate with other folks like you, Gordon, new friend of Alliance. If we have some risk management issue, we'll collaborate with our centers of influence quite a bit, and many times bring them in as part of our team working with the family business.
Mm-hmm. Brandi, I wanted to go back to that culture excellence thing and have you kind of, kick in on that. How do you work that? How do you develop it? What are the success factors that you see happening when you're engaging on those conversations?
So key is, like Rob kind of mentioned, is making sure that they're ready for change, that they're in that change mindset. That's a huge factor in it, and that they're open to receiving that information. We really need, especially the organization leadership, to be able to humble themselves a little bit, listen to the information, take it in, and be able to say, okay, even if they disagree with it, even if they say, like, that's not my intent, I'm not setting out to do that, and it's a shame that this is the result of maybe my efforts to do this, but they need to be able to put themselves in a place where they can affect change and make some difference in the organization. So it's often tough for them to hear it, but often we find that once they sit with it for a bit, they're able to then say, okay, so what do we do now? And often we do employee surveys. So we survey the employees of the company, asking them some pretty direct questions around either what we feel, what we've gathered the themes may be, or the struggles may be, so that we can then try to pinpoint where exactly the organization needs to go first. What's the biggest kind of sore thumb out there that we can start to attack. So we do that, and then a lot of times we try to create some steering teams within the organization, to where we can get the most people involved within the organization from different departments, so that the team starts to see, like, okay, it's not just upper management pushing information down to me. Mm-hmm. It's the organization as a whole being able to affect change for everyone. And so that makes everyone feel like, okay, I'm represented here in this initiative, I'm being heard. And then you have to back that up with changes being made and implemented. You've laid the groundwork for it. You've said the things that you're going to do. And then once the people in your organization start seeing those things being done, then you're just reinforcing that change process. And then people start to get enrolled, but it takes time. And our clients are often looking for a quick fix. They're looking for what pill can I start taking that's going to change this? And it's like being told diet and exercise. It's going to take time to see those changes. And so our job again is to set the expectations and to help our clients not get discouraged and be able to keep pursuing that culture.
Yeah, I think, Brandi, there's kind of like two buckets around culture of excellence. You have structure, and then you have behaviors. Mm-hmm. And to Brandi's point, a lot of times we get clients, we need something fast. Well, we can maybe address some things structurally, right? Making sure you got the right meetings in place and you got agendas for meetings, you got the right organization, you know who owns what decision. Those are some structural things that if we implement those, eventually they may make a difference. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have the right behavior expectations in place and really clear and know where your deficiencies are with behaviors and motivations, then that becomes, you can have the best structure in place, but if you've got passive resistors, you're not going to make the change. So it's a balance. We try to integrate them both and work on both of them at the same time. But I don't know, Brandi, we worked 10 years at your family's business, and it probably, how many years was it till we really saw a significant culture change?
It was probably at least 5, I would have to say.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that balance between structure and behavior, because you can institute structural change, institutional change. You can kind of read a book and say, these are the 15 best practices of running a company, and we're going to sharpen the saw and use all those kind of phrases and things like that. But if you don't have a willing and to use a phrase that Brandi used, humble management team that's willing to take it in and really digest it and understand it, there's going to be a lot of resistance, I can imagine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How do you guys get inserted? I mean, like, does somebody go through the yellow pages or the Google and say, I've got a family problem, and they come across Ferguson Alliance, or are they referred in by, I would imagine, another trusted advisor like a CPA or somebody like that? How do you get your business, and how do they recognize it's time to call?
Referrals, I mean, client referrals or centers of influence referrals, and then our content, doing podcasts like this, and you know, we try to make sure we're putting out content that's very credible and relevant, specific for the family business. And so as we put that content out, we do a lot of webinars and podcasts. I think that starts bringing us clients, but by far and away, it's the referrals of where we get, because the work that we do is so personal. Mm-hmm. We have a long sales cycle. Mm-hmm. In other words, we don't just pick up a phone call and have a client after 15 minutes. I think our sales cycle, maybe it's come down a little over 5 months. Mm-hmm. It takes a while, because we have to build trust with that client. We have to build credibility with that client. And so we encourage our clients, our prospects, to do due diligence on us. We let them talk to other clients. We try to put a lot of testimonials up on our website, but we want to be very transparent with the client, that they understand what the experience is going to be like. And as Brandi said at first, even though they hire us, they're really going into it a little bit uneasy. What is this going to be about? How can these people really help me? They don't know anything about building construction, as an example. We don't. that's not why they're hiring us. We're not experts on their industry. Right. We're experts on how to get family businesses prosperous.
And I would say, to speak on that, one thing that we see too is, and this was again my experience, maybe you've got the head of the family decides to bring us in, but there's other family members that are like, well, I don't know about this, I'm not too sure. And so part of our role too is to help everybody else on the team or within the family understand what our role is and get them enrolled in the process, because we do try to be very honest and transparent in that, like, are you ready to do the work? Because if you're not ready to do the work, then it's not the right time. And so right. We're not trying to sell you on something that is not going to deliver results. It doesn't do us any good, and it wouldn't do our client any good either. So we try to be very upfront about what we do and how it's going to go, and the time input that the client's going to need to do, and just the work. It's work. It is work. And so we want to be very open and honest about that.
I would imagine that there's situations where the head of the company, whether the title is the CEO or whatever their title is, they knew how to make this widget, so they were the de facto leader. But they're great at making widgets, but they suck at leading the company. How do you, and there may be a younger generation, a brother or sister, or a non-family member that would be the better CEO or president, or hey, the widget maker, the master widget maker could be a good leader, but he needs training, he needs self-confidence in this area. How do you identify that? How do you communicate that? And how do you address it? How do you create good leaders in a company?
Well, first of all, we believe that leaders are not born, and the act of leading, we call it leadershipping, is something that you learn. And you're absolutely right, Gordon, that not only for family businesses, but all businesses, over 80% of the leaders, there was a study done, the name of the book is Leadership Agility. Stephen Josephs and Bill Joyner, I think, were the authors of it. I would encourage you to read that book, because, and I may not get their statistics exactly right. I mean, they were researchers and they had a lot of statistics, but some 80%, something like that, of the leaders that they studied, they were in that leadership role because they were an expert at something. They were an expert accountant or expert salesperson or expert engineer. And so they're in that role, but they're an expert in their trade craft, but they knew nothing about leadership. And so so we believe everybody has the opportunity to learn how to do leadershiping. And it's not a position. I mean, even the forklift operator can provide leadership. We really believe that, right? Because leadership to us is bringing the future to the present. If you can bring the future to the present where you are, and you can get people connected to that and enrolled in that, now you can start moving forward in an aligned way. So how do it is difficult. What we try to do is we ask some of these key leaders to take some assessments. So remember I said we do an assessment at the beginning. Well, one of the non-financial assessments is we do behavioral assessments, motivation assessments, skill assessments, and we benchmark against, a very large group of people to show them where they are actually based on these reports that we get from this behavioral scientific company. And that begins to open the door. For some, they go, whoa, this is amazing. And for others, they maybe want to peek in, and then they're going to slam it really short. So we have to, again, meet the client where they are and work with them and help them self-discover where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are. And then we start taking them on a path of leadership training. Now, many patriarchs are of the age, they don't want to do that, which is perfectly fine. So then we have to work with them on who is going to do it. And so when we can get them to move in that direction, go, look, I don't want to do it. Yeah, I see we need it. I don't know who. Well, then we help them, whether it's getting the job profile right, doing recruiting, whatever we have to do. Or if they haven't had a succession plan in place, we start interviewing family members. I mean, there's multiple paths that we can take. But the point is we have to give them situational awareness, and we have to improve their self-awareness, because we're not all great at all things. We're really not. Inside Alliance, we're doing our own behavioral assessments and skill assessment ourselves. We're testing. We test all this stuff out. We know who we are. We're very comfortable in our skin of, how we're so much better working together as an alliance as opposed to independently. And so that's how we work with these family business owners, to get them to realize that.
That's great. The word that popped into my head as you were talking about it internally is humble. You must have a level of humbleness in order to accept your capabilities and what you're good and not so good at.
Well, so many times I think humans look at it as right or wrong, good or bad.
Right.
And what we try to do is take all of that out of the view. And this is who you are. This is the genius of who you are. This is the greatness of who you are. This is the value to the organization of who you are. Now, your organization also needs some other attributes. They're not yours, but where can we get those?
Right. Where can we find them?
Yeah, and maybe Sally has them, or Joe, or Sue, but that we can find those, and then we can help build that team. And it really comes down to, again, we come back to that first question: are you a business first family or a family first business? We always come back there, because that's the center pole of moving things forward. Because if we made a decision as a family, we slapped the table, we are a business first family. Okay, well, John, you're not the most qualified CEO. And you slap the table that you want to put the interest of the business ahead of your personal interests.
Except for that.
Yeah, and then we've had that, and he'll say, except for that. And then we just go back, but we have other family shareholders that hold the feet to the fire. I had this with a client many years ago, two brothers. They were co-leading the business, and eventually we had to have a leader. And that was difficult, right?
Yeah.
It was very difficult, but in the end of the day, they did. And the other leader said, no, we said we're a business first family, and my brother-in-law is a lot more capable than I'm at, and he actually has the will to do it, and I really don't. So
good for him.
Yeah, but it took months of work.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And it also, I would say, it helps empower the family members in the organization as well, be able to say, okay, I don't want to work in the family business, or I don't want to be in this role. This isn't for me. That it helps with that as well, because it creates a visualization to say, this is my genius, and what I'm doing right now isn't accentuating any of these points. And so it allows everyone to start having conversations around, like, do I have to keep working in the family business, or can I go do something else, or can I do something else in the organization? So it just opens up all of these different types of things that you honestly, like when we started the process, where we ended up versus when we started, one, I would have never guessed that's where we would be. And two, it wasn't even something that we were even entertaining or talking about. So there's definitely an evolution that takes place. But I will say, once you get there, it's like you knew it all along.
Interesting.
Like you knew where it needed to go. You were just too afraid to do it, or you were too afraid to say it out loud. But inevitably, you have a lot of gut and intuition in it as well.
And that kind of brings me to a question I wanted to ask you, Brandi, because you're the younger of the two people on the conversation today, and you were a younger generation in your business. What advice would you have for the younger generation that maybe is in this state of disruption? Maybe they've hired you or a firm similar, or maybe they just don't know what to do. Like, how do you get a younger person's head wrapped around, I've got to go speak to my dad, or I got to go speak to my aunt who runs the company, because this is just not working for me? Like, what advice do you have for that younger generation?
Well, humble is the word of the day. So first of all, I encourage everyone to really dig deep into who you are. And just because you have a certain last name or you have an expectation that you either put on yourself or was put on you by your family, let that go. And be honest. You can, no matter what happens, as long as you're honest in the process, you can't go wrong. Honest with yourself, honest with that aunt or your dad or your mom or whoever you need to have that conversation with, but be honest. And sometimes honesty is just saying, I don't know yet. I don't know if I should stay working here or if I shouldn't. I don't know if I should stay in this role or if I should aim for a different role. And say, but I want you guys to help me get there. Because if you are family, if you're putting, if you want to have a good relationship with your family, they're going to help you get there no matter what. And that was really an expectation that I put on myself, was to say, no, like, we're obligated. We have to do this. There's no other option. Really just putting this heavy weight on it. And again, that's just not true. So it's, above all, having an honest conversation with yourself about what you really want, what's going to bring you joy, what's going to make you feel purposeful and fulfilled, and then what do you need to do to get there. And then as a family, everyone starts having that same conversation with themselves and then with each other. That's gonna be the only thing that equals success.
I think that's good advice. And I've seen it too many times. Younger people, they get frustrated because they don't like the way the direction of the firm is going. And sometimes it's not even in a family business. And they just don't know what to do. Should I go and come back? Should I just leave? Should I have that hard conversation? And then inertia takes over and nothing ever changes, and they just become very frustrated, and then it just doesn't end well.
I would say the worst thing that you can do is to expect others to change. And when they don't, keep expecting them to change. And then you yourself are unhappy. And ultimately, the only thing that you can change is yourself or your own situation. So by removing that expectation that your parents change or your siblings change or the business changes or the direction of the company changes, and it doesn't, you got to let it go. And you've got to just rip that Band-Aid off and say, okay, well, then maybe this isn't the place for you. And that goes for anybody. That's not just for a family-owned business.
Yeah.
If you can't get behind the vision, the mission, the purpose, the values of a business, then you should go find somewhere that you can. Because that's going to be the most gratifying thing for you.
Yeah.
Like, life's too short.
Well, that's the phrase I was just going to use. Life is too short, and to be miserable in a job just because, like you said earlier, you have the same last name as what's on the front door, doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. And if you're not happy, it's going to show up in your job performance. And if you ultimately become the person sitting in the big chair in the corner office and you're not happy, it's going to your performance is going to suffer, and your company's performance is going to suffer. So I think
there's a ton of movies out there that show it just does not work out.
and life sometimes does mimic Hollywood.
Yeah. We're their greatest inspiration.
I am sure we could go on for hours and hours talking about businesses because we all work with business owners. But I want to be respectful of your time and the audience's time as well. Is there anything that we didn't hit on that you do want to put on the table and talk about?
The one thing I'll end with is being a leader of a business is a lonely spot because you're by yourself. Being the leader of a family business is even more lonely. And so whoever it is, make sure you surround yourself with qualified advisors that can help you make very difficult decisions, give you advice, not tell you what to do, but give you advice and guide you along the way. And it's not just one advisor, right? I mean, you don't want to only rely on your CPA or only your attorney, but you want to have everybody in. Build your advisory team is what I would recommend. Is make sure you've got an advisory team that is committed to the same commitment that you have, which is to prosper your business. That's why they're there. They're not your golfing buddy. So I highly recommend forming an alliance of business advisors that will guide you to your ultimate commitment of creating a prosperous business for your family, your community, your employees. So that's what I would hope everybody would leave with, is being open to that. A lot of business owners aren't. They think they've got to kind of, get through it, put their head down. But it doesn't have to be that hard.
I think that's a great way to end the conversation and kind of put a cap on it, because it doesn't matter how smart any one business leader is. They've got tunnel vision, they've got blinders on, they only see what they see, they only know what they know, and they could know a heck of a lot of stuff. But having outside voices on a regular basis, having that conversation, broadening their horizon, seeing other points of view, I think is very valuable. I participate in a mastermind that does a lot of that kind of stuff, and it's very valuable for me. And I have a group of friends that I usually tap into when I'm struggling with an issue or just thinking about something and want their feedback on, and it's very, very valuable. So I think it's a great point. Before we go, do you guys work around the country? Okay, so you're not confined to any one area. And so with that, if people who are watching or listening to this wanted to get in touch with you and have a conversation, how would be the best way to do that?
Well, I would point everybody to our website, Ferguson-Alliance.com, Ferguson-Alliance.com. And there we give you lots of ways to contact us. We have our toll-free numbers, we have our direct phone numbers, we have our direct email addresses, we have a general email address. So we're very, very easy to get in touch with. Just go to our website, Ferguson-Alliance.com, and you'll be able to contact us very quickly. You can also sign up for our newsletters and webinars, and we'll continue to give out, we hope, really relevant and credible information specific to family businesses.
Great. Well, Rob and Brandi, thank you very much for being on the show. It's been a good conversation. I really enjoyed it. I've seen so many of these situations that have occurred in, my client experiences, and I'm sure that everybody that's listening has seen similar kinds of situations as well. So I do appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you for having us, Gordon. We enjoyed it, had fun. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So in closing, my name is Gordon Coyle. This is the New York Business Leaders Podcast. If you have an interesting story that you'd like to tell, contact me. My contact info and Ferguson Alliance's contact info will be in the show notes and in the description box on YouTube, in case you're on the treadmill or driving a car right now and you don't have time to jot it down. But reach out to me if you'd like to be on this show, and reach out to Brandi and Rob if you'd like to have a conversation with them. Until next time, stay well. Thanks.
That's it for this week's episode of the New York Business Leaders Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode. In the meantime, find more interviews and resources at nybusinessleaders.com.